Today we're going to try to put this hydraulic cylinder for the steering on the loader back together. First thing we're going to do is cut these cup seals. Here's the old one, or one of the old ones, and here's what I got for new ones. Obviously, they're missing a hole. Best thing I can come up with to do this is line these up as good as I can. Clamp them in the vice grips, like so, in the vise. Make sure they're perfectly lined up, as perfectly as they can be. And I took this hole saw to the belt sander and I ground off all the outside, all the teeth that were hanging out, which if you've ever looked at a hole saw, every other teeth is bent in and every other tooth is bent out. The reason I did this is because it would have made a way too big of a hole and it would have chewed into the original one. So this fits pretty good in there. And the goal is to just cut through as little as I have to. Or cut as little material as I have to. Seems to be working really good. So far, so good. Probably take a little bit of cleaning up, but I think it'll work. It's pretty dang centered. I like it. I'll do the other one. Needs a little dulling up, but it'll be good. I like it. I'm just gonna go around it with these. Kind of trim it up a little bit. I got an idea for getting the rest of that fuzz off. Oh, that looks pretty good to me. Pretty dang centered and everything. So this was the old rod. As you can see, some dipstick took and welded on it. You can see some weld right here, and then they ground it off, and there's some more weld here, more weld here. It's just a train wreck. So, got rid of that. Here's how the new one turned out. Substantially better. And the yoke on the end of this was threaded on the end and booger welded on. Idiot turkeys. I'll be right back. Alright, anyhow. Chickens were having a domestic outside the door, so I had to go break that up so you guys could hear me. So anyhow, this yoke was threaded. What happened was the threads pulled out. Well, I think they partially stripped in the yoke, partially stripped on the cylinder or on the rod. So I cut new threads on the rod, cleaned up the threads in the yoke, put a nice bevel on it. So now it's threaded together. It's probably never going to go anywhere. It was originally held together with a 5/16 bolt. I could probably put that in there. It'd probably be good. I'm going to go weld it. I don't want to be in the middle of nowhere and have this thing break on me. That would be really not very fun. So I'll be right back. I didn't go too nuts on it, but I cranked the welder way up. Got good penetration. For what it does, that's plenty. If it was something that was lifting and pulling real hard, I would have probably gone around it one more time. Rather than cover the chrome, I just absolutely doused it with spatter spray. I've had pretty good luck doing that. We'll see how it fared this time. I don't know, it looks pretty good to me. First piece that needs to go on is the nut for the gland. You gotta put a new wiper in there. Probably should have done that first. Wah, wah. Now the whole purpose of this is to keep junk out. So you want the scraping edge facing the elements. Just really gently pushed it in with the vise. Didn't damage anything. Except for my finger when it got caught between the vise and the vise jaw. That was pretty sweet. Don't stick your finger in between those two. Alright. This fella goes on next. I made sure I made a decent relief cut on the rod when I made it. I actually put it back on there and cut it deeper. I'm going to put this on there before I forget. Okay, the next thing to go on is a little Belleville type spring. Now I already put these in there, but basically there's a wiper or a packing stack. That goes in there. Just little V-groove seals. Some leather, some nylon, or they might be Teflon. Either nylon or Teflon. Oh, I left the base in there. And the base, I believe, is just plastic. They go in there like so. It's easiest to put them in one at a time, honestly. I'm gonna go grab a little grease. All I'm using here is some Schaefer's 238. It's what I use on all my equipment, pretty much for everything. Just greasing that sucker up good. I don't want to cut anything apart when I put it together or mess anything up. Also on the outside of the gland here, I already replaced it. When I originally took it apart, all it had was this O-ring. But it's supposed to have this little rubber backer too. So, the rubber backer always goes towards the air side, the side where no pressure is going to be. So this bronze piece with the wiper in it is actually kind of the bushing for the rod, and it doesn't really get any lubrication unless I leave the gland too loose and it gets some oil out there. So I'm going to put some grease in between these two so that bushing has some lube for the rest of its life. Hopefully I don't ever have to mess with this again. Okay, the next thing that goes on is this piece of steel with the cutout for this O-ring. And then this is bronze as well. Also acts as a bushing between the piston and the barrel. It's kind of the piston as well. And last but not least, the nut. I cut the thread so this nut is probably a touch tighter than it should be, but it still goes on nicely. But being that it's a touch tighter than it normally would be, and the nylon nut is used, it'll actually be tight on the nylon again. So all we got to do now is send this thing home. I'll set that there. Yep, I like the way that turned out. It's very nice. And what I did to this, I just ran my ball hone in it a little bit. I didn't go nuts with it. Just enough to put a little bit of a crosshatch into it. It's a dual acting cylinder, so there's oil everywhere in here, so retaining oil isn't really that big of a deal. I don't know if you can see, I took a stone and ground off the sharp surfaces in here, so when I put this in, it doesn't cut the edge off, which I assume is how that one got done like that, because you can see it's kind of at a little bit of a radius. So I'm guessing when it was put together last time, that sharp surface grabbed it. So I'm going to lube the barrel up good. It's got a decent radius for going together. Get some lube on that fella. Get some lube on that fella. Not tons, just enough to make it slippery. Now you can see there's a little bit of distance there. The purpose behind that is you don't want to crank this nut tight. What this nut does is it puts pressure on that packing. Over time, that packing will kind of sack out a little bit. And should this thing start leaking, you basically come and give it a little snug it back up. I think that's really honestly plenty tight. I'll put it together and see, if the thing starts dripping, obviously I'll tighten it up a little bit more, but I don't really think it's necessary. It feels pretty good the way it is. And there's this little set screw. I didn't show you, but this set screw's got a little bronze puck, or bronze or brass puck on the inside that goes up against the threads that keeps it from moving. And that bronze puck will keep from messing the threads up. There you have it. I hydraulic cylinder that was once really messed up that's now in pretty nice shape. And all I got left to do is finish making these garbage. I cut them out and did some of the stuff off camera. I'll maybe do the rest on camera. We'll see. Here's what I've made so far. I've cut the pins on the lathe. Put a shoulder on them. One of them was going to locate the washer. As soon as I locate the washer. So, this is going to be this pin. I'm going to burn this washer on the top of it. I'm going to figure out where this flat needs to be. Then I'm going to cut the flat. The washer is bigger than it needs to be, but this one, if you can see, was getting pretty worn. So this pin was actually rotating pretty good in the hole. Having this bigger surface area is going to make it so it doesn't do that. And I'll probably make it a little farther out and fine tune it with the grinder. Just so I can make sure that it's tight in there. Because we don't want it to rotate. We want it to rotate where the grease is. And then this one was obviously messed up. And then the grease hole, this goes in the hole like this. So the grease hole's at the bottom of the hole. So the grease is going to go in there and gravity's going to, for the most part, pull it out. So I addressed that issue. Put the grease hole kind of in the middle where it belongs. Now I need to cut out this square deal that keeps this one from turning. And then I'll bore a hole in it. Probably just put it right in the lathe and do it. Because it'll be the easiest. And then I'll weld it on then. I'll probably do that off camera. That's a bunch of busy work that I'm guessing nobody cares about. So I'll come back when that's done and we'll put this thing in and see if it works. So that's what it looks like right now. I'm going to go test fit it. I'm guessing I'm going to have to tune it up a little bit with the grinder. Tuning required. Give that another shot. A little more. It's got to be pretty close. It's pretty close to the old one. Fits pretty good. Minimal rotation. Does rotate just a tiny bit, but you know, it's an old loader, whatever. Perfection need not be obtained. We'll figure out a grease zerk. I believe these fellas are quarter 28. So a lot of times tap stuff you need a numeric drill bit set. Today I need a number 3 drill bit, which I believe is 213 thousandths. Actually, it probably says on here. Yeah, it does. 213. So I need that number 3 drill bit to make it the right size for the tap. Oh, I'm gonna yard sale that. Yep. We're going to close that because otherwise the next video is going to be me picking up grease sticks. One of these days I'll clean this shop and we'll make it so I don't need to try to find a flat surface every 8 seconds. We'll have some actually. That should be plenty. Normally I'll use Tap Magic, but last time I was ordering some Tap Magic off of Zoro tools. I stumbled across that and it was a little bit cheaper, and CRC makes some good stuff, so I figured I'd give it a go. Smart guy would have just done this right in the lathe and he wouldn't have had to play these trying to find straight games. But hey, what fun is being smart? That should be plenty for a grease jerk. Okay, well that's one pin down. I'm basically going to do all the same stuff on the other one, and we'll come back when I'm ready to put this hydraulic cylinder in. Alright, well we're back under this hot rod. I'm going to put this thing back together. Got that other pin made. Cut that piece out, chucked it up in the lathe, bored a hole in it, burned it on. Just now realized I didn't put a grease zerk in it, but whatever. It's tapped, or it's drilled and tapped, so grease zerk's a 2-second job. Okay. So when I first got this thing together, it moved pretty freely. Now that it's been sitting for an hour or two, it tightened up. I think what happens is it just squishes the grease out. I made this so it's got to go in a certain way. Fits the tightest. should do it. I just glue that all, yes. So I'm putting on the hoses that go to the other cylinders first. So otherwise, if I put on the main hoses coming from the hydraulic pump and steering valve and all that heavy stuff, oh, you know what? If I do it that way, then I'm just hooking it on and it's got this spot to come dump out of. Now that I've got this one on, I can put this one on. Which I'm going to do first because if I remember correctly, this one was a bugger to get with this one on. So, try to use the combination that works the easiest. Not that it's going to dump much oil out anyway, I guess.